My daughter-in-law looked me straight in the eyes and said, "We got married yesterday, and that's when my whole world fell apart." I remember how my hands started trembling. The champagne glass I was holding nearly slipped from my fingers. The family dinner I had spent all day preparing suddenly felt like a stage for my public humiliation. Just 1 week earlier, exactly 7 days before, Emily had called me in tears. My son Michael's girlfriend of 3 years needed help. She told me they were finally planning their wedding, but her parents couldn't contribute much. "Barbara," she said, her voice breaking, "I found the perfect dress, but it's $3,000. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. Michael said you might be able to help." Of course I helped. That's what family does. I withdrew $3,000 from my retirement savings, money I had been putting aside for 15 years, money that represented hundreds of extra shifts at the hospital where I work as a nurse, money I had saved while raising Michael alone after his father abandoned us when he was just 4 years old. When I handed Emily that check, she hugged me tight. "You're the mother I never really had," she whispered. "We'll pay you back someday, I promise." 7 days later, at what I thought was just a regular Sunday dinner, they dropped the bomb. "We have an announcement," Michael said, looking nervous. Emily was beaming beside him, wearing a simple sundress, not the wedding gown I had paid for. "We got married yesterday," Emily announced to the stunned silence around our dining table. "Just a small courthouse ceremony. We wanted to keep it intimate." My sister Deborah, who was visiting from Ohio, nearly choked on her food. My brother Tom froze with his fork halfway to his mouth, and I felt my heart literally skip a beat. "But the dress?" I managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. Emily's smile didn't waver. "Oh, that? I returned it. We decided to save the money for our honeymoon instead." Save the money? My money. The money she had cried for just a week earlier. Michael looked confused. "What dress, Mom?" That's when I realized my son didn't even know. Emily had asked me for the money behind his back. The money was never for a dress. It was never for a wedding. It was just taken from me by someone I had welcomed into my family. "Nothing," I said quietly, forcing a smile while something broke inside me. "Congratulations to you both. The rest of that dinner is a blur." I remember mechanically serving dessert. I remember nodding and smiling as they talked about their secret ceremony. I remember my sister squeezing my hand under the table, seeing the pain in my eyes that no one else seemed to notice. Later that night, after everyone had left, I sat alone in my kitchen and let the tears finally come. 28 years of being both mother and father to Michael. 28 years of sacrifices. And this was how it ended, with a lie and $3,000 stolen by the woman he had chosen over me. But little did I know, this betrayal was just the beginning. What would unfold over the next months would test every belief I had about family, loyalty, and forgiveness. You see, Emily didn't just take my money. She took my son, and she was just getting started. When I confronted her privately the next day, asking about the money, her warm facade instantly vanished. "It was a gift, wasn't it?" she said coldly. "Or did you expect us to follow your rules because you helped us out? Michael and I make our own decisions now." I was stunned. This wasn't the sweet girl who had called me crying about a wedding dress. This was someone else entirely. Calculated, manipulative, and suddenly very powerful. "Does Michael know you asked me for money for a dress that you never bought?" I asked her. Emily's smile turned into something I'd never seen before. "Why don't you tell him? See who he believes, his mother or his wife." In that moment, I realized I was trapped. If I told Michael the truth, I risked losing him forever. If I stayed silent, I was allowing Emily to manipulate us both. You imagine raising someone their entire life, only to have them stolen right from under your nose? The weeks following their announcement were among the most difficult of my life. I kept replaying that dinner in my mind, searching for clues I might have missed. Had Emily always been this calculating? Had my love for Michael blinded me to who she really was? I called my sister Deborah almost every night, trying to make sense of it all. "Barbara, You need to tell Michael the truth, Deborah insisted. He deserves to know what kind of woman he married. But I couldn't. Every time I considered confronting them, I remembered Emily's cold eyes. See who he believes, his mother or his wife. The risk was too great. I had already lost so much. Then came the housewarming invitation. Michael and Emily had used my $3,000, along with who knows what other money they had manipulated from others, as a down payment on a small house across town. They were hosting a party to celebrate. I almost didn't go. The thought of watching Emily play hostess with money she had essentially stolen from me made my stomach turn. But missing my only son's housewarming, what kind of mother would that make me? So I bought them a nice set of pots and pans, wrapped them in silver paper with a big bow, and drove across town with my heart in my throat. The house was modest but cute, a 1960s ranch-style home with a fresh coat of yellow paint and flower boxes in the windows. As I walked up the driveway, I could hear laughter and music from the backyard. I recognized my son's laugh immediately, and it made my heart ache. Despite everything, I missed him. Emily answered the door with a picture-perfect smile. "Barbara, you made it!" She hugged me as if nothing had happened between us, as if she hadn't threatened me just weeks before. "Everyone's out back. Michael will be so happy you're here." I followed her through the house, noticing framed photos of them everywhere. Hiking trips, beach vacations, moments from their lives that I had never been part of. Not a single photo of me or Michael's childhood was visible. It was as if his life before Emily didn't exist. In the backyard, about 20 people were gathered around a grill where Michael was cooking burgers. When he saw me, his face lit up in a way that made my doubts momentarily fade. "Mom." He hugged me tight, smelling like the same cologne I'd given him for Christmas 3 years running. "I wasn't sure you'd come. I wouldn't miss it," I said, forcing a smile. "Your first home is a big deal." Michael beamed. "Let me introduce you to everyone. You know Emily's parents, of course." I turned to see Emily's mother and father approaching, Linda and Robert Taylor, a couple I'd only met twice before. Linda embraced me warmly while Robert gave a stiff nod. "Barbara, we're practically family now," Linda gushed. "Though we were as surprised as you about the courthouse wedding. We thought we'd at least be invited." So they didn't know either. Emily had kept her plans secret from everyone. "We're just happy they found each other," I managed to say. "And this house is lovely," Robert snorted. "Yeah, lovely and expensive. I told them to wait another year, save up more. But Emily said they had enough for the down payment already. Must be doing better than I thought at those jobs of theirs." My heart sank. Emily's father didn't know about the $3,000 either. How many other lies were holding this perfect picture together? As the afternoon wore on, I watched Emily work the crowd like a politician. She was charming, attentive, the perfect hostess. She made sure everyone's drinks were full and plates were loaded with food. She laughed at all the right moments and touched Michael's arm possessively whenever anyone approached him. Then I overheard something that made my blood run cold. I was in the kitchen helping myself to more lemonade when Emily's voice floated in from the hallway. She was talking to someone in hushed tones. "Don't worry about it, Jason. The old lady came through just like I said she would. 3,000, no questions asked. We've got plenty of time to figure out the rest." My hands froze around the picture. Jason? Who was Jason? And the old lady? Was that me? I know, Emily continued, her voice low but clear enough for me to hear. "Michael doesn't suspect a thing. Look, I gotta go. People will wonder where I am." When she walked into the kitchen and saw me standing there, Emily didn't even flinch. Her smile remained perfectly in place. "Barbara, are you finding everything okay? Let me help you with that." I wanted to confront her right there. I wanted to demand answers. Who was Jason? What were they planning? But as she took the picture from my shaking hands, I saw something in her eyes. A warning. A challenge. "Everything's fine," I said instead. "Just getting some more lemonade." Emily's smile widened. "Great. Oh, and thanks again for the housewarming gift." Those pots and pans will definitely come in handy, though Michael and I were hoping for something a little more substantial. You know, to help us get started in our new life. More money. She wanted more money. And you? What would you do in my place? Comment here. That housewarming party changed everything. I drove home in a daze, Emily's words echoing in my mind. The old lady came through. Michael doesn't suspect a thing. Who was Jason? What game was Emily playing? I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emily's cold smile, heard her dismissive tone when referring to me as the old lady. After a lifetime of putting my son first, working extra shifts, skipping vacations, postponing my own dreams, this was what I had become. Just an old lady with a checkbook. The next morning I did something I never thought I'd do. I called in sick to work, my first sick day in 3 years, and drove to Michael and Emily's neighborhood. I parked a block away from their new house and waited. I'm not proud of this moment, but desperation can make even the most reasonable person act in ways they never imagined. At 9:15 a.m., I watched Michael leave for work, backing his Corolla out of the driveway and heading toward downtown. He worked as an accountant at a mid-sized firm, a steady job he'd held since graduating college. My son, always responsible, always dependable. Until Emily. I expected Emily to leave soon after. She worked as a receptionist at a dental office. But 9:30 came and went, then 10 arrived. Finally, at 10:45, a sleek black BMW pulled up in front of their house. A man I'd never seen before, tall, dark-haired, wearing an expensive-looking suit, got out and walked to the front door. He didn't knock. He had a key. My heart pounded as I watched him enter my son's house like he owned the place. 5 minutes later, Emily appeared in the doorway, kissing him goodbye before he got back in his car and drove away. Emily stood watching from the porch, wearing a silky robe, her hair tousled. She looked nothing like the polished, perfect daughter-in-law from the housewarming party. She looked different, happier somehow. I slumped down in my seat, feeling physically ill. Was this Jason? Was Emily cheating on my son? After everything, the lies, the stolen money, the secret wedding, was this the final betrayal? I wanted to march up to that house and confront her. I wanted to take pictures as evidence for Michael. But something held me back. Fear, maybe. Or the horrible realization that even with proof, I might still lose my son. Emily had woven her web so tightly around him. Instead, I drove to my sister Deborah's house, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. I need help, I told her when she opened the door, surprised to find me on her doorstep in the middle of a workday. I think Emily is cheating on Michael. Deborah listened without interrupting as I told her everything. The $3,000 for the non-existent wedding dress, the secret ceremony, the conversation with Jason at the housewarming, and what I'd witnessed that morning. When I finished, my sister was quiet for a long moment. "You need proof," she finally said. "Real proof, not just suspicions. Michael won't believe you otherwise. Emily's made sure of that." "How do I get proof?" I asked desperately. I can't exactly follow her around with a camera. Deborah's expression hardened in a way I'd never seen before. My sister, 5 years older than me, had always been the practical one, the voice of reason. But now there was something fierce in her eyes. "You fight fire with fire, Barbara. This girl is playing dirty, manipulating everyone around her, including your son. It's time you stop being a victim." Over the next 2 weeks, Deborah and I became amateur detectives. We took turns watching the house when we could. We noted the black BMW returning 3 more times, always when Michael was at work. Once, the mystery man stayed for nearly 3 hours. But our big break came from an unexpected source. Linda Taylor, Emily's mother, called me out of the blue. "Barbara, it's Linda, Emily's mom. I need to talk to you about something. Can we meet somewhere private?" We arranged to meet at a coffee shop halfway between our homes. When Linda arrived, I barely recognized her. The cheerful, slightly overbearing woman from the housewarming was gone. replaced by someone who looked like she hadn't slept in days. "I found something," she said without preamble, sliding into the booth across from me. "Something about Emily, and I don't know what to do." Linda opened her purse and took out a folded document. Her hands trembled as she pushed it across the table to me. "I was cleaning out our attic. Robert and I are thinking of downsizing, and I found this in a box of Emily's old things." I unfolded the paper and felt my breath catch. It was a marriage certificate, dated 5 years earlier. Emily Taylor had been married before, to a Jason Mercer. "I didn't know," Linda whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "She never told us. All this time, I thought Michael was her first serious relationship, but she was married, Barbara, for almost 2 years according to the divorce papers I found with this." I stared at the document, my mind racing. Jason, the man on the phone, the man in the BMW, not a new lover, an ex-husband. But why the secrecy? Why was he still in Emily's life? "There's something else," Linda continued, her voice dropping even lower. "Emily's been asking us for money too. Significant amounts. She told Robert her car needed major repairs. Then she told me she needed dental work, not covered by insurance. We gave her nearly $5,000 between us in the last 3 months. The pieces were starting to fit together, forming a picture more disturbing than I had imagined. This wasn't just about Emily manipulating Michael or taking advantage of me. This was something bigger, more calculated. "Have you talked to her about this?" I asked. Linda shook her head. "I'm afraid to. The way Emily's been acting lately, she's not the daughter I raised. It's like she's become someone else entirely." As I drove home from that meeting, the marriage certificate safely tucked in my purse, I felt a strange mix of vindication and dread. I finally had something concrete, proof that Emily had been lying. But what was her endgame? What was she and this Jason planning? I decided to do one more thing before confronting Michael. I hired a private investigator. The private investigator, a retired police detective named Frank Daniels, cost me another $2,500, money I couldn't really afford. But at this point, what choice did I have? My son's future was at stake. "I'll need a week," Frank told me after I explained the situation. Maybe 2. These things take time if you want solid evidence. Those 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I went through the motions at work, smiled at my patients, pretended everything was normal when Michael called to check in. But inside, I was falling apart. What would Frank find? And more importantly, how would I tell my son? When Frank finally called with an update, his voice was grim. "Mrs. Lawson, I think you should come to my office. There are some things you need to see in person." Frank's office was small but neat, located above a bail bonds place downtown. When I arrived, he had folders spread across his desk and a laptop open to a spreadsheet. "Your daughter-in-law has been busy," he said without preamble. "And not just with your son." Over the next hour, Frank laid out what he'd discovered. Emily wasn't just seeing her ex-husband Jason on the side. They were partners in what appeared to be an elaborate financial scheme. They had targeted at least 3 other families in the last 5 years, following the same pattern each time. She finds a suitable mark, usually a single man with family money or good income potential. She becomes the perfect girlfriend, integrates herself into their life completely. Meanwhile, she's siphoning off money through various means. Loans that never get repaid, joint bank accounts she quietly drains, expensive gifts she returns for cash. Frank showed me surveillance photos of Emily meeting with Jason at various locations across town. In one particularly damning image, they were kissing in his car, her wedding ring to my son clearly visible on her hand. Once she's taken what she can get, she disappears, usually after about 18 months. The previous victims were too embarrassed to go to the police, or thought they wouldn't be believed. After all, they willingly gave her access to their finances. I felt sick, but she actually married my son. That's different from the others. Frank nodded grimly. That's what concerns me. This is an escalation, and there's more. He pulled out a document and slid it across the desk. Your son recently took out a second mortgage on that new house for $45,000. My hand flew to my mouth. What? Why would he need that much money? According to the loan application, home improvements. But I've been watching that house for 2 weeks. No contractors, no deliveries of materials. Nothing. Does Michael know about this loan? Frank's expression said it all. The paperwork has both their signatures, but in my experience, it's easy enough to forge a signature on these documents, especially if you have access to all someone's personal information. I thought about how trusting my son was, how he probably left mail lying around, kept passwords written down, how Emily, as his wife, could access virtually every aspect of his financial life. There's one more thing, Frank said, hesitating for the first time. They've been looking at properties in Costa Rica, beachfront, expensive, the kind of places people go when they don't plan to come back. I left Frank's office with copies of everything he'd found. Photos, financial records, the Costa Rica property listings. The weight of it all pressed down on me like a physical burden. My son wasn't just being cheated on. He was being set up for financial ruin. But confronting him wouldn't be easy. Emily had spent years building a wall between us. Subtle comments about how I was too involved in his life, scheduling conflicts that prevented us from spending time alone together, private jokes between them that excluded me. If I approached this wrong, I could lose him forever. I decided to try one more avenue before going to Michael. I contacted the police. Detective Sarah Martinez listened patiently as I laid out everything Frank had discovered. When I finished, she sighed heavily. Mrs. Lawson, I understand your concerns, but from a legal standpoint, there's not much we can do yet. Your daughter-in-law hasn't committed any crime that we can prove. The money you gave her was a gift by your own admission. The house was purchased legally. And while the second mortgage is concerning, both signatures are on the paperwork. But she's planning something, I protested. She and this Jason person, they've done this before. Detective Martinez's expression softened. Family matters are complicated. What looks like fraud to you might be explained as misunderstandings or poor communication to someone else, without clear evidence of criminal intent. I left the police station feeling defeated. If professionals wouldn't help me, I was on my own. That night, I made a decision. I would confront Emily directly. One last chance to explain herself before I took everything to Michael. Maybe, just maybe, there was an explanation that made sense. Or perhaps, faced with the evidence, she would simply leave town and spare my son the heartbreak of knowing the full truth. I arranged to meet her for lunch the next day, at a restaurant downtown near Michael's office. I told her I wanted to discuss a surprise birthday party for my son. She agreed readily enough. Emily never passed up an opportunity to appear the dutiful daughter-in-law. The restaurant was busy when I arrived, full of office workers on their lunch breaks. Emily was already seated, looking immaculate as always, in a pale blue dress, her hair perfectly styled. "Barbara, so good to see you," she greeted me with her usual false warmth. "I've been thinking about Michael's birthday, too. He's turning 30 after all. It should be special." I sat down across from her, my folder of evidence in my purse, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. "Before we discuss Michael's birthday, there's something else I want to talk about," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Emily's smile didn't waver, but something flickered in her eyes. Wariness, perhaps. Or calculation. "Of course. What's on your mind?" I took a deep breath. "I know about Jason, Emily. I know about the second mortgage. I know about Costa Rica." Her face went completely still, like a beautiful mask suddenly frozen in place. For several seconds she said nothing, just stared at me with those cold blue eyes. Then, incredibly, she laughed, a light tinkling sound that drew glances from nearby tables. "Barbara, what are you talking about? Who's Jason? What second mortgage?" She was going to deny it. Of course she was. I reached for my purse, prepared to show her the evidence. But before I could, Emily leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper, all pretense of confusion gone. "Let me be very clear. Whatever you think you know, whatever evidence you think you have, Michael won't believe you. Not over me. I've made sure of that." The naked malice in her tone shocked me, even after everything I'd learned. This wasn't just a con artist. This was someone who enjoyed causing pain. "Why?" I asked, my voice breaking despite my efforts to stay strong. "Why Michael? Why us?" Emily's smile returned, colder than ever. "Why not? A steady, dependable guy with a good job, no debts, and a mother with a decent retirement fund. Perfect setup. And you know what's really funny? He made it so easy, so desperate to be loved, to have the perfect little family, just like you." Anger surged through me, hot and fierce. "I'm going to tell him everything. Today. I have proof." Emily sat back, utterly unconcerned. "Go ahead. Show him your little detective photos. Tell him his mother's been spying on his wife. See how that goes." She stood up, smoothing her dress. "Oh, and about that $3,000. Consider it payment for taking care of your lonely, desperate son for the last 3 years. Quite a bargain, really." With that, she walked out of the restaurant, leaving me sitting alone with my untouched water and my useless folder of evidence. I sat in that restaurant long after Emily left, trying to gather my thoughts. Her confidence was terrifying. She truly believed Michael would choose her over me, over the truth, over his own financial security. And the worst part? She might be right. I picked up my phone to call my son, then set it down again. This wasn't a conversation to have over the phone. I needed to see his face, needed to be there to show him the evidence, to help him process what would undoubtedly be devastating news. But first, I needed backup. I called Deborah. She knows I know. I told my sister, my voice shaking. And she doesn't care. She thinks Michael won't believe me. "Then we make him believe," Deborah said firmly. "We show him everything at once. And we bring in Emily's parents, too. Linda deserves to know what her daughter is doing." The plan came together quickly. Linda and Robert agreed to meet us at my house that evening. Deborah would pick up Michael from work, telling him there was a family emergency, which, in a way, there was. I would have everything ready. The photos, the financial documents, the marriage certificate. By 7 p.m., we were all assembled in my living room, the same room where I'd raised Michael, where we'd opened Christmas presents and celebrated birthdays, where I'd helped him with homework and comforted him after breakups. The walls were lined with photos of our life together, mother and son against the world. Michael looked confused and worried as he paced the room. "Mom, what's going on? Aunt Deb said it was urgent. And why are Emily's parents here? Is someone sick?" Linda sat rigidly on my sofa, her husband beside her looking equally tense. They had arrived with their own folder of documents. Apparently, they'd done some investigating after our coffee shop meeting. "Sit down, Michael," I said gently. "There's something important we need to talk about. About Emily." His expression immediately hardened. "What about Emily? If this is another complaint." "It's not a complaint," I interrupted. "It's much more serious than that. Please, just listen. Look at the evidence before you make any judgments." For the next hour, we laid it all out for him. The photos of Emily with Jason, the financial records showing money being drained from accounts, the Costa Rica properties, the second mortgage, the pattern of similar cons in other cities. Linda showed him the marriage certificate and divorce papers she'd found. Robert explained how Emily had extracted thousands from them too, using different stories each time. Throughout it all, Michael sat motionless, his face growing paler by the minute. He didn't interrupt, didn't ask questions. He just stared at each piece of evidence as it was presented to him. When we finished, the room fell silent, all eyes on my son, waiting for his reaction. Finally he spoke, his voice barely audible. "I need to talk to Emily. I need to hear her side." My heart sank. After everything we'd shown him, he still wanted to give her a chance to explain, to spin more lies. "Michael," Deborah began, but he cut her off. "No, you've all had your say. You've shown me your evidence. Now I need to talk to my wife." He stood up, reaching for his phone. "I'm going home. Don't follow me. Don't call me. I'll contact you when I'm ready." As he walked toward the door, I made one last desperate attempt. "Michael, please. She's planning to leave the country with that money. With your money, you could lose everything." He paused, his hand on the doorknob. Without turning around, he said, "Maybe I already have." The door closed behind him with a soft click that somehow felt more final than a slam would have. Linda broke down in tears as soon as he left. "He doesn't believe us. After everything we showed him, he still doesn't believe us." Robert put his arm around his wife, his face grim. "Give him time. It's a lot to process. No one wants to believe someone they love could betray them like this." But I knew my son. I knew the stubborn set of his shoulders as he walked out. He wasn't going home to confront Emily. He was going home to warn her, to protect her. The next 48 hours were agony. Michael wouldn't answer my calls or texts. Linda reported the same silence when she tried to reach him. I considered driving to their house, but couldn't face the possibility of seeing Emily's triumphant smile if she answered the door instead of my son. On the third day, just as I was leaving for work, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Michael standing there, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His clothes were wrinkled, his eyes red-rimmed. "Can I come in?" he asked, his voice hoarse. I stepped aside wordlessly, my heart pounding. He walked into the living room and sank onto the couch, staring at the floor. "You were right," he said finally, "about everything." Relief and sorrow flooded through me in equal measure. "Oh, Michael, I confronted her with what you showed me. She denied it at first, said you were making it all up because you were jealous of our relationship. But then," he swallowed hard, "then I told her I'd already called the bank about the second mortgage, that I knew she'd forged my signature." My son looked up at me, his eyes filled with a pain I'd never seen before. "She laughed, Mom. She actually laughed. Said I was pathetic, that I'd been an easy mark. And then she admitted everything. Jason, the money, all of it. Said they'd been planning it for years." "Where is she now?" I asked quietly. "Gone. By the time I got home from work yesterday, she'd cleared out her things. Took my grandmother's jewelry, too. The pieces you gave us for our wedding." He made air quotes around the word, his voice bitter. "The joint account is empty. She maxed out both our credit cards. And the second mortgage money." He shook his head. "Already transferred to an offshore account, apparently." I sat beside him, putting my arm around his shoulders the way I used to when he was small and hurting. "I'm so sorry, Michael. I'm so sorry she did this to you. I should have listened to you from the beginning," he said, his voice breaking. "You tried to warn me about her so many times, but I wouldn't hear it. I thought you were just being overprotective. I thought—" He trailed off, unable to continue. "It's not your fault," I told him firmly. "Emily and Jason, they're professionals at this. They know exactly what they're doing, exactly how to manipulate people." We sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on us. "What do I do now, Mom?" Michael finally asked, sounding younger and more vulnerable than he had in years. "The house, the debt, my credit, it's all ruined. I could lose everything. We'll figure it out together," I promised him. "We always have, haven't we? You and me against the world, remember?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Yeah, I remember." I made him coffee, then called in sick to work for the second time in a month. Some things were more important than perfect attendance. We spent the day making phone calls. To the bank, to credit card companies, to a lawyer I knew who specialized in fraud cases. The road ahead would be difficult, but not impossible. Michael was young. He could rebuild his credit, his finances, his life. What I didn't tell him, what I couldn't tell him yet, was that I had already decided to cash out what remained of my retirement fund to help him. After decades of careful saving, I would be starting over at 58. But that's what mothers do. We sacrifice, we protect, we rebuild. If you've ever lived through something like this, comment. I needed to hear this. As evening fell, Michael finally asked the question I'd been dreading. "Do you think we'll ever find them? Emily and Jason? Make them pay for what they did?" I thought about Detective Martinez's dismissive attitude, about how many times Emily and Jason had apparently pulled this scam without consequences. I thought about the Costa Rica properties, about how easy it would be for them to disappear. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "But I do know this. People like that don't change. Sooner or later they'll try this again with someone else. And eventually, they'll make a mistake." What I didn't know then, couldn't have known, was how soon that mistake would come, and how deeply it would pull us back into Emily's twisted game. 6 months passed. Michael moved back in with me while he sorted out the financial mess Emily had left behind. The house went into foreclosure. There was no way he could keep up with 2 mortgages on his salary alone. His credit was in shambles. The lawyer was doing what she could, but without Emily and Jason in custody, options were limited. Slowly, painfully, we rebuilt our lives. Michael found a second job working evenings at a local bar to help pay down the debt. I postponed retirement, taking on extra shifts at the hospital. We were making progress, one day at a time. Then the email arrived. It came to my personal account, not Michael's. The subject line read simply, "Missing something?" The body contained just 3 sentences. "Your son was so easy to fool. Wonder who else might be. Check the attachment if you want to see what we're up to now." My hands trembled as I clicked on the file. It was a photo. Emily and Jason on a beach, arms around each other, cocktails in hand. But it wasn't the smug expressions on their faces that made my blood run cold. It was the elderly man, visible in the background, sitting at a beachside table, smiling as he looked at something off camera. I knew that face. It was my brother Tom. Tom, who had retired to Florida 5 years earlier, after a successful career as an investment banker. Tom, who was widowed, lonely, and, crucially, wealthy. Tom, who had no idea his niece's ex-wife was now targeting him. I called my brother immediately, my heart pounding. No answer. I tried again, and again. Nothing. "What's wrong?" Michael asked, coming into the kitchen to find me frantically dialing my brother's number for the 4th time. I showed him the email, watched his face drain of color as he recognized Emily in the photo. "That's the resort town where Uncle Tom lives," he said quietly. Is she going after him now?" I nodded, unable to speak through the fear gripping my throat. Tom was the perfect target. Alone, financially secure, emotionally vulnerable after losing his wife. And he had met Emily several times at family gatherings. She would know exactly how to approach him, how to gain his trust. "We have to warn him," Michael said, already grabbing his keys. "I'll book us flights to Florida right now." The next 24 hours were a blur of rushed packing, emergency time-off requests at work, and constant attempts to reach my brother. By the time our plane touched down in Tampa, we still hadn't heard from him. Tom's condo was in a gated retirement community about an hour from the airport. As we drove, Michael kept trying his number. "Still nothing," he reported after the 6th attempt. "This isn't like Uncle Tom. He always answers his phone." The knot of dread in my stomach tightened. Drive faster. When we reached the guard gate, I gave Tom's name and address. The security guard checked his list, then looked up with a friendly smile. "Oh, Mr. Adams. He left a few days ago on a cruise with his new lady friend. Very last minute. Said it was spontaneous. Quite romantic for a man his age." Michael and I exchanged horrified glances. "Did he say when he'd be back?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. 10 days, I believe. Caribbean cruise. Lucky guy." Back in the car, panic set in. "A cruise? Tom hates boats. He gets seasick just looking at the ocean. There's no way he would willingly go on a cruise." Michael was already on his phone, searching for cruise lines departing from Tampa in the last few days. "There are 3 possibilities," he said after a moment. "Royal Caribbean, Carnival, and Norwegian, all with Caribbean itineraries. We need to contact them all," I said. Tell them it's a medical emergency if you have to." Hours later, after countless phone calls and escalations to supervisors, we had our answer. Tom was indeed on a cruise, the Norwegian Pearl, currently en route to the Cayman Islands, and he had booked a suite, one of the most expensive on the ship, for himself and a companion named Lisa Mercer. Lisa, not Emily, but Mercer, Jason's last name. "They've changed their identities," Michael said, stating the obvious. "But it's them. It has to be." We drove to the cruise port, hoping to find someone who could help us. The customer service representative was sympathetic but firm. "We can't stop the ship mid-journey, except for life-threatening emergencies, and without proof that your brother is in danger." "He is in danger!" I nearly shouted. "These people are con artists. They've done this before." But without police involvement, without formal charges, there was nothing they could do except promise to have the ship's security check on Tom's well-being. Defeated, we checked into a hotel near Tom's condo. There was nothing to do now but wait for the ship to make its next port call in Grand Cayman, where at least we could try to contact local authorities. That night, unable to sleep, I used the spare key Tom had given me years ago to enter his condo. Maybe there was something there that could help us understand what had happened, how Emily and Jason had approached him. The place was immaculate as always. Tom had always been the neat one in the family, but there were subtle signs of recent changes. New photos on the mantel. Tom with a woman whose back was to the camera, her hair now dark instead of blonde, but the posture unmistakably Emily's. Brochures for investment opportunities in Costa Rica. A half-empty bottle of motion sickness medication on the kitchen counter. In Tom's home office, I found what I was looking for. His financial records, meticulously organized as always. And there it was, a wire transfer authorization for $250,000, dated just 3 days earlier. The memo line read, "Property Investment, Costa Rica." My hands shook as I took photos of the document with my phone. This was proof, real tangible proof of what they were doing. I was about to leave the office when something caught my eye, a small blinking light under Tom's desk. I knelt down to investigate and discovered a tiny camera, expertly hidden between 2 books on the lower shelf. They were watching the condo, waiting to see if anyone came looking for Tom, which meant they knew we were here. I backed out of the room slowly, trying not to look directly at the camera. My mind raced. If they were monitoring Tom's condo, they already knew we had discovered their scheme. They might accelerate whatever they were planning. Back at the hotel, I showed Michael what I'd found. "We need to go to the police," he said immediately. "Local police, FBI, whoever handles this kind of interstate fraud. We have evidence now. The wire transfer, the camera." The next morning, we did exactly that. Detective Carlos Ramirez of the Tampa PD listened carefully to our story, examined the photos I'd taken of Tom's financial documents, and made some calls. "This isn't the first time we've heard about something like this," he told us after hanging up. "There's been a string of similar cons targeting retirees up and down the Florida coast. Different names each time, but the same MO. Romantic relationship, rushed investment opportunity. Victim disappears on a trip while funds are transferred offshore." "Disappears?" I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "What do you mean disappears?" Detective Ramirez's expression was grim. "In most cases, the victim eventually returns, financially ruined but physically unharmed. But in 2 instances," he hesitated, "the victims never came back. Their bodies were discovered weeks later, apparent accidents while traveling." The room seemed to tilt around me. This wasn't just about money anymore. Tom's life was in danger. "We need to find him," Michael said, his voice tight with fear. "Now, before they reach Grand Cayman." Detective Ramirez was already on the phone again, this time to the Coast Guard. Within an hour, an alert had been issued to all vessels in the Caribbean. The Norwegian Pearl was contacted. Security was heightened, and a search began for Tom and his companion. But we were too late. The ship's security reported that the suite was empty, the beds unslept in. Tom and Lisa had last been seen boarding a small chartered boat at their first port of call in Key West, a side excursion not booked through the cruise line. They had vanished. The next 48 hours were the most terrifying of my life. Every phone call, every email could bring news of my brother, found safe, found injured, or found dead. Michael and I barely slept, barely ate, as we worked with Detective Ramirez, and now the FBI to track down Tom and his captors, because that's what they were now, not just con artists, but kidnappers, possibly worse. "We have a breakthrough," Agent Wilson of the FBI told us on the morning of the third day. "We've identified Jason Mercer's real identity, Jason Keller, wanted in 3 states for fraud, and suspected in the disappearance of an elderly man in Arizona last year." "And Emily?" Michael asked, his voice hollow. He had lost weight in the weeks since discovering his wife's betrayal, but these last few days had carved deeper lines into his face. "Emily Carter, born Lisa Keller. Jason's sister, not his wife or partner, as she sometimes claimed. They've been working together for at least 6 years that we can trace. Brother and sister. Not lovers, as the surveillance photos had suggested. They had been play-acting even then, creating a fictional relationship to throw off anyone who might be watching." "What about Tom?" I asked, the only question that really mattered. "Any sign of him?" Agent Wilson's expression softened slightly. "We've tracked the charter boat they hired in Key West. It was found abandoned near a private dock in the Bahamas. There are signs it was used recently, but no indication of violence or struggle." "So they could have transferred to another boat?" Michael suggested. "Headed somewhere else?" "It's possible. We're working with Bahamian authorities to check all recent departures from nearby marinas, and we're monitoring airports and private airfields as well." The waiting was unbearable. I kept thinking about Tom, my big brother who had taught me to ride a bike, who had threatened my first boyfriend with bodily harm if he didn't have me home by curfew, who had walked me down the aisle when our father was too ill to attend my wedding. Tom, who had always protected me, and now I had failed to protect him. On the 4th day, my phone rang with an unknown number. I answered immediately, hoping against hope it might be Tom. "Hello?" I said, my voice trembling. "Barbara." The voice was familiar, though I couldn't immediately place it. "It's nice to hear your voice again." "Who is this?" I demanded, though a sick feeling in my stomach told me I already knew. "I'm hurt you don't recognize me. After all, we were family once. Emily." But her voice was different, harder, with a slight accent I couldn't place. "Where is my brother?" I asked, gesturing frantically to Michael to call Agent Wilson. "If you've heard him." "Tom is fine, for now." Her tone was casual, as if we were discussing the weather. "He's enjoying a lovely view of the Caribbean. Very peaceful. What do you want?" "Straight to business. I always like that about you, Barbara. So different from your soft, sentimental son." She paused. "What I want is simple. The FBI needs to back off. The investigation, the alerts at airports and marinas, all of it needs to stop. Once we're safely away, we'll release Tom. Everyone wins." "And if we don't?" Her laugh was cold, nothing like the warm chuckle she had perfected as Michael's girlfriend. "Then Tom has a tragic accident while swimming. Elderly man, rough seas. It happens all the time." My blood ran cold. "I need a proof he's alive. Let me speak to him." There was a moment of silence, then rustling sounds as the phone apparently changed hands. "Barbara?" Tom's voice was weak but unmistakable. "Is that you?" "Tom, are you hurt?" "Where are?" "Don't tell them anything," he interrupted, his voice suddenly stronger. "Don't give them what they want. They're going to His voice cut off abruptly, followed by the sound of a struggle and a pained grunt. "That's enough family reunion for now," Emily said back on the line. "You have 24 hours to call off the FBI. I'll contact you with instructions for confirming you've done so." "Wait," I cried. "How do I know you'll let him go? How can I trust you after everything you've done?" "You can't," she replied simply. "But what choice do you have?" The line went dead. Agent Wilson arrived within 15 minutes, bringing equipment to trace the call if Emily contacted us again. We won't actually call off the investigation, he assured us, but we can make it appear that we have, put out statements that we're exploring other leads, pull back some of the visible presence. Will that be enough to fool them? Michael asked. They're clearly professionals at this. It might buy us time, the agent acknowledged, and time is what we need right now. Every agency in the Caribbean is looking for your uncle. The net is closing, but would it close fast enough? Tom's interrupted warning echoed in my mind. They're going to kill him? Was that what he had been trying to say? My brother was running out of time. The 24 hours Emily had given us crawled by in agonizing slowness. Agent Wilson and his team set up surveillance on my phone, ready to trace the next call. Michael and I waited, barely speaking, each lost in our own thoughts. When my phone finally rang again, it wasn't Emily. Mrs. Lawson? An unfamiliar male voice, formal and professional. This is Captain Hernandez of the Bahamian Coast Guard. We found your brother. My heart stopped. Is he... He's alive, ma'am. Dehydrated and suffering from exposure, but alive. We found him on a small, uninhabited quay, about 50 miles east of Nassau. He was alone. Tears of relief flooded my eyes. Thank God. Can I speak to him? He's being airlifted to a hospital in Nassau for treatment. You should be able to speak with him in a few hours. After I hung up, Michael and I clung to each other, sobbing with relief. Tom was alive. Somehow, he had escaped or been abandoned by his captors. Either way, he was safe. Agent Wilson received the official report an hour later. Your brother was found tied to a tree on the island, with a small supply of water but no food or shelter. According to preliminary interviews with the rescue team, he reported that his captors had left him there yesterday, telling him someone would find him, eventually. They were never planning to kill him, I realized. They just needed him out of the way while they escaped with his money. And they knew we were closing in, Agent Wilson added. They must have decided it wasn't worth the risk of adding murder to their charges, if caught. Within 24 hours, Michael and I were on a plane to Nassau. Tom was recovering in the hospital there, weak but alert, when we arrived. The sight of my brother in a hospital bed, his skin reddened from sun exposure, tubes running into his arms, brought fresh tears to my eyes. Look at you, he said when he saw me, his voice raspy. Still rushing in to save the day, little sister. I hugged him as gently as I could, mindful of his condition. I'm so sorry, Tom. This is all my fault. They only targeted you because of your connection to me, to Michael. Tom shook his head weakly. Don't you dare blame yourself. These people, they're predators. They would have found someone to victimize with or without the family connection. Over the next few days, as Tom grew stronger, he told us the full story. How Lisa had approached him at his favorite beachside restaurant, claiming to recognize him from a financial seminar years earlier. How she had slowly worked her way into his life, introducing her business partner, not identifying him as her brother, who had amazing investment opportunities in Costa Rica. How they had convinced him to liquidate assets for the once-in-a-lifetime chance to triple his money. I was a fool, Tom said bitterly. After 40 years in banking, I should have recognized the signs. But she was so convincing, so sincere, or so I thought. The cruise had been their idea, a chance to celebrate the investment before finalizing the paperwork. Once on board, they had drugged his dinner and helped him to their chartered boat in Key West, claiming he was ill. The rest was a blur for Tom until he woke up on the island, tied to a tree with only a jug of water and a mocking note. Thanks for the investment. Hope someone finds you before the tide comes in. Did they take everything? I asked hesitantly. Tom's expression was grim. Nearly. The $250,000 wire transfer was just the beginning. They had me sign papers giving them access to my brokerage account while we were on the ship. Total loss is close to $1.2 million. Michael winced. Can you get any of it back? Some, maybe. The FBI has frozen what they could find. but most of it was transferred through a series of offshore accounts. It's likely gone for good. Tom reached for my hand. I'm not destitute, if that's what you're worried about. The house is paid for. I have my pension. I'll survive. But the financial loss wasn't what worried me most. It was the haunted look in my brother's eyes, the same look I had seen in Michael's after Emily's betrayal. The psychological damage of such calculated deception went far deeper than any monetary loss. They're still out there, I said quietly. Emily and Jason, or Lisa and Jason, whatever their real names are. They'll do this again to someone else. Tom nodded slowly. Probably. People like that don't change. But we know who they are now, Michael pointed out. Their faces, their methods, their patterns. They can't hide forever. I thought about all the victims before us, the men Emily had conned, the families she and Jason had devastated. I thought about how close we had come to losing Tom completely. No, I agreed. They can't hide forever. And one day, they'll make a mistake, a real mistake. And when they do, I left the thought unfinished, but Tom understood. He squeezed my hand. When they do, we'll be waiting. As we flew home a week later, Tom dozing in the seat beside me, I found myself thinking about family, real family. Not the perfect, idealized version Emily had pretended to value, but the messy, complicated, fiercely loyal reality. Michael and Tom had both been deeply wounded by Emily and Jason's deception, but they were healing. We all were, together. This wasn't the last time I would have to fight for my family. The next video shows the continuation of all this.